Looking back, theological reflections on the intersection between Pentecostalism and Ubuntu within the African section of the Apostolic Faith Mission of South Africa. Syncretism in the African section of South African Pentecostalism followed the emergence of the Ethiopian movement. The latter took the lead in promoting the syncretizing of Christianity and African culture and practice, herein referred to as Ubuntu. A similar syncretism emerged in the Christian Catholic Church in Zion in Wakkerstroom, the black section of the Apostolic Faith Mission, soon after the departure of Reverend Peter Leroux, who was appointed to lead the Apostolic Faith Mission in Johannesburg since John G. Lake was returning to the United States of America. This article intends to show that such syncretism did not occur in a vacuum. Rather, it was influenced by the interpretation of some portions of Scripture, the influence of John Alexander Dowie practice, and some dreams and vision of a leader of the Catholic Church in Zion in Wakkerstroom. This form of syncretism later permeated subsequent sections of African Pentecostalism in the Apostolic Faith Mission, resulting in the emergence of two categories of African Pentecostalism in the Church, namely those who accept this phenomenon and those who abandon it. This leads us to the main research question of the article, which reads as follows. How can theological reflections on the past experiences of the black section of the Apostolic Faith Mission of South Africa contribute to promoting a biblical approach that takes cognizance of Ubuntu without committing syncretism? Thus, this article applies the Mahadi research method conceptualized for practical theology to answer this question. It further demonstrates that it is possible to promote a biblical approach that embraces Ubuntu without committing syncretism. The Mahadi approach begins with the first step, that is appreciating what is common between Ubuntu and Pentecostalism. And in the appreciation phase of the Mahadi, we notice the following as similarities between Ubuntu and Pentecostalism. And the Pentecostalism that we're talking about here is the Pentecostalism that is traced to the roots in Azusa Street in 1906, the Azusa experience that was led by William Seymour in America in 1906. It came or reached South Africa after 1906 through the missionary efforts of John G. Lake and his friend, who came to South Africa and stayed in Johannesburg and preached to a group of Zionists who were followers of John Alexander Dowie. And some of these followers who were practicing divine healing accepted the message of John G. Lake and his friend. And it also reached the followers of Zionism who were based in Wakkerstroom, and this is what we call the African section of the Apostolic Faith Mission. And those people who accepted the message of John G. Lake were later grouped into what we call the Apostolic Faith Mission, those who were in Johannesburg. And those who were in Wakkerstroom were later called and grouped as what we call now the African section of the Apostolic Faith Mission. Now, this Pentecostalism is compared with Ubuntu that is practiced in South Africa. So within Ubuntu and this kind of Pentecostalism, the following are important similarities. One, there is a belief in the existence of a divine being. Two, there is a belief in the practice of divine healing. Three, there is a belief in dreams, prophecy, and visions. So all these are the similarities that are identified between Ubuntu and Pentecostalism as we apply our research method that is called Mahadi. Now that we have identified what is similar between Ubuntu and Pentecostalism, we are then able to move into the next phase of Mahadi process, which is called appreciating and which is called presenting. And as we come to this stage of presenting, we will be using the diagram here or the figure here, which shows the movement from New Testament teachings to and from Ubuntu practices, which were identified as dreams, visions, divine healing, and also the biblical interpretation of a leader of a black section of the Apostolic Faith Mission in Vagerstroom. This figure was adopted from the researcher's work in 2009, where he conceptualized a way of comparing Ubuntu, New Testament leadership, as well as Western values. So that was adapted to fit this article, and some modifications were done there and there. And the modification have now resulted into the figure that we are using here. And this modification is showing two main steps that are engaged as we present a biblical approach that promotes accepting and embracing Ubuntu without promoting an unbiblical syncretism. First, the first step is this. We will be looking and starting from the New Testament, going into the practices of Ubuntu, we will be looking at Acts chapter 16, verse 16 to 8, 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 23 to 33, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 19 to 20. And we'll be using these verses to engage the practice of Ubuntu in dreams, visions, and prophecy. From there, we move back into the New Testament, and we'll be looking into two Bible scriptures which were used to promote divine healing in the black section of the Apostolic Faith Mission. This is in Exodus chapter 4, verse 1 to 4, and in Revelation chapter 7, verse 9. And from there, we'll be going back to the New Testament to establish our biblical method of embracing Ubuntu without promoting an unbiblical syncretism. So the first step, look into Paul as a model to discern prophecy, dreams, and visions. And as we look into Paul as a model, as we noted, we are looking to Acts chapter 16, verse 16 to 18, 1 Corinthians chapter 14, 23, 26 to 33, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 19 to 21, as stated in the above figure. And in all this, in Acts chapter 16, we see Paul engaging a girl who was prophesying and ultimately casting or rebuking the demon in that girl, because Paul noticed that she was prophesying the truth, but the source of her prophecy was not the source of Paul's faith, which was the God of the Bible or the God of Christianity. In 1 Corinthians chapter 14, 26 to 23, we see here Paul encouraging that Christians or believers in Corinth should practice spiritual gifts, and among the spiritual gifts that he's mentioning is the gift of prophecy. And he is saying the importance and the purpose of gifts is to edify the church. So the practice of gifts in the church should be done to edify all of members of the Corinthian church, and today, as we talk, all the churches as we speak. In 1 Thessalonians, Paul is writing to the believers in Thessalonica, and he's encouraged them not to quench the spirit of prayer and prophecy. And they must be able to test all the spirits as they engage in prophecy and prayer. So this becomes a model that we use to promote believe in dreams, prophecy, and vision, and which are also identified in Ubuntu, but being checked by the scriptures. The second step is look into how we check the interpretation of the scripture and the practice of divine healing. Nkonyana, who was the founder of the Apostolic Faith Mission, which was later the Christian church that we mentioned above, used Exodus chapter 4, verse 1 to 4, and Revelation chapter 7, verse 9 to verse 9 to promote the use of sticks and the use of church uniform. And his understanding of the scripture is very flawed, because in Exodus chapter 4, verse 1 to 4, where God said to Moses, remove your shoes because the land that you're standing is holy, did not promote what he was doing, and the use of a stick that God had said Moses should use was not promoting the use of a stick to do or to perform divine healing as he understood or as he promoted and taught his followers. The same thing happened with the issue of seeing people in his vision, or in the vision where the revelator saw many people who were dressed in white. Nkonyana used this to promote the issue of using a uniform in the church. And this goes back to the influence of Alexander Dowie, who was promoting the use of a white garment in terms of being what it's available and what is seen in his practice, because he believed that as a servant of God and as a prophet, then he promoted the belief and the wearing of a white garment. So Nkonyana took the belief and in the white garment, as well as the scripture, to teach and promote the wearing of church uniform. So if you look into this, we see that this is erratic way of interpreting the scripture in Exodus chapter 4 and in Revelation chapter 9. In this way, then, we are able to say we can be able to promote an Ubuntu that takes cognizance of the scriptures without moving away from what is biblical, and always emphasizing that we're moving from the biblical point to the Ubuntu practice and back to the biblical point to do and promote what we see as important and what we can embrace without creating syncretism that is unbiblical. Thank you very much. Bye.